Within the world of Sakamoto Days, there are many powerful assassins with many different kinds of superhuman abilities. Contained in this world of assassins, there's a group referred to as the Order. The Order is a secret sub-organization of the Japanese branch of assassins that only contain those who are beyond strength itself. And within this legendary group of assassins, there's only been one who's ever been outright stated to be the strongest of all time. This title belongs to Sakamoto Taro. Wait, this guy? Are we sure this is Sakamoto? Alright man, whatever. Let's continue. Sakamoto Taro is a former member of the Order and once the greatest assassin ever, now turned convenience store owner. Sakamoto Taro is a pretty tall fat dude with gray slick back hair, usually sporting his convenience store apron and a pair of reading glasses. But do not let this appearance fool you. Best described as a calamity turned hero, Sakamoto in the past used to be completely different from what he is now, as again, he was referred to as the GOAT of assassins, and this was for a reason. Nobody could eliminate targets as well as he could judging from this title, and he could do it with just about any weapon without feeling a single bit of remorse. John Wick of the modern day. Upon retiring from the Japanese Association of Assassins, he'd mellow out and lose a lot of his physical attributes, meanwhile maintaining most of his skill. As Granny Mio states that when Sakamoto was fat, he's only at 30% of his strength compared to his prime form, so he's lost a lot of his touch. Sakamoto would be introduced to the series in the first chapter, as we would see that in the very first set of pages that in his prime, he was referred to as the greatest, and he'd be able to perception blitz the average assassin with absolute ease. To fast forward through this chapter, we'd come to see Sakamoto a little bit older and pretty fat, as he settled down with his family and retired from the JAA. Despite this, trouble would come back to him and he'd pull off insane feats in this fat state of his, being able to deflect a bullet with a cough drop by spitting it out of his mouth, and even disassemble an entire gun while throwing a single punch toward an assassin before the assassin could even pull the trigger to shoot it. Despite his appearance, Sakamoto is no joke. Something of note here is that Sakamoto not only has lost his health, but he's placed limiters on himself, specifically the mercy rule due to his wife. Basically, he will not fight with the intention of taking anybody's life, the antithesis of assassination, which is everything he knows by the way. To reinforce this, Chapter 6 would introduce Yoichi Nagumo into the story, both Sakamoto's best friend and rival of the past. Nagumo would come into the store in order to warn Sakamoto about a bounty being placed on his head, pointing out that Sakamoto's mercy will not allow him to match Nagumo or the other assassins. Basically saying that Sakamoto is nerfing himself heavily. This detail will be important for basically every single fight mentioned in this video, as it will allow us to assume that Sakamoto is always a little more powerful than we think. Sakamoto would first meet his true serious opponent in Boiled, someone who was hunting Sakamoto down for his bounty, the fight beginning at chapter 10. Boiled is actually a pretty strong assassin compared to most, primarily fighting using his super ball bombs and rocket dynamite punches in order to deal consistent, massive explosive damage to his opponents. As Sakamoto would try to land a single hit on him in his fat state, he just can't. The fight is completely one-sided as Boiled puts Sakamoto down for losing his edge as an assassin. However, as Boiled thinks that Sakamoto is actually dead, massive amounts of bloodlust overcome him, forcing him to see an illusion of his body being pierced and cut to shreds. Boiled hearing someone recite the exact chemical composition of the bombs he uses to fight, Sakamoto reappears in a skitty state that resembles his prime, stating that now, he's going all out. Sakamoto in this state speed blitzes Boiled, and after 2 hits, Boiled states that he's already losing consciousness. If it wasn't clear enough, this skinny state serves as a pseudo-transformation of Sakamoto's, a state that he can instantly swap to if he needs to, as all he needs to do to access it is to burn off the fat from his body by exercise, which he apparently does pretty fast. In a way, you can say that Sakamoto accessing this form is a speed feat in itself. This form boosts his stats tremendously, and that's about it. It can be permanent if he so chooses, but he prefers to go back into his fat state most of the time. After dealing with Boiled, Sakamoto's next decent opponent would be Heisuke. Heisuke, who is not impressive as Boiled here, but boasts the best shooting record in the history of the Assassin School, knocking Sakamoto down from rank 1 to 2. Fat Sakamoto here would do 2 noteworthy feats. One is deflecting Heisuke's sniper bullet with his bare hand, and 2, he'd be able to grab a rock and throw it through Heisuke's sniper rifle upon finding where Heisuke was shooting from. He did this from a considerable distance too, seeming like he threw this rock from across an entire city. After Heisuke, Sakamoto's next notable fight would be against Kashima, but he completely stomps him, even in his fat state. The reason why he had to go skinny against Kashima is because he realized that Kashima was immortal, so he wouldn't have to hold back anymore. This reveals that Sakamoto primarily uses the skinny state when he'd be able to use it against someone who can withstand the power of this state, rather than using it to match or surpass his opponent's strength. It's close enough to be the same thing, but I think it's important to Sakamoto's character to point this out, as it shows that he's just as focused on not accidentally killing his opponents as he's focused on winning his fights. But of course, with Kashima being unable to die, Sakamoto cuts loose and unloads onto him. Pause. Sakamoto in between his next fights will receive something of a power boost to his fat state from Granny Mio. Granny Mio previously stated that Sakamoto can only use 30% of his prime strength in his fat form. She would use acupuncture on Sakamoto in order to loosen up his fat body. What this did was temporarily restrict Sakamoto from using his slim state, but give a permanent boost to his fat form. Sakamoto had never been using the full 30% of his prime state. Although he had access to it, he wasn't truly utilizing all of his power. What Granny Mio did with the acupuncture was allow Sakamoto to loosen up and use his fat form to its fullest capabilities, describing it as his body coming to terms with the weight he's put on. He's become even more powerful without slimming down. The capabilities of this new power boost are displayed when fighting against Apart, an opponent that Sakamoto wanted to instantly slim down against, proving that he's at least strong as boiled. And Sakamoto manages to wipe Apart quite handily and take him out for lunch with his friends after. Sakamoto, Apart, and Shin would then confront Uzuki. This is the man who placed the previously mentioned bounty on Sakamoto. Uzuki is a special case, as he is the primary antagonist of the series, a man hell-bent on destroying everything and Sakamoto's peer from the past. Sakamoto was completely outmatched here, being stabbed by Uzuki before he even realized it, and Uzuki would do the same to Apart right after. Sakamoto would try to attack Uzuki again, only to be blitzed again. Uzuki would then taunt Sakamoto, threatening his child, and this would cause Uzuki to feel that same bloodlust that Boiled once felt, imagining massive blades piercing his chest, and Sakamoto would instantly charge at him right after. But Uzuki would manage to barely dodge his attack this time, this proving that Sakamoto does get much more powerful when deciding to remove his restraints, and before anything else could happen, Takamura would come in stalking Uzuki and force him to retreat. He does pummel Sakamoto a bit more before he leaves though. After Uzuki, we don't see Sakamoto fight until Proxy Gaku. Proxy Gaku, because he's controlling someone's body using a VR headset. Ridiculous, I know, but that's the nature of this series. This Gaku had just finished up whooping many of the JA applicants in a 1-on-4, but Sakamoto, even in his fat state, is on another level. He completely dominates Gaku and causes so much damage to the body he possessed that the VR headset would disconnect and the original host would wake up. Something of note here is that obviously Gaku is normally way more powerful than this, being able to fight against Nagumo and Takamura when he's fighting normally, but the body he was possessing could not keep up with his movements. Sakamoto later in the arc would fight against Kanaguri, a member of the current order. Kanaguri would be able to defeat an old Satoda. This is Sakamoto sensei, and he would defeat her without much trouble. Satoda was also chosen to become a member of the order in the past, but would turn down this invitation in order to continue teaching her students, so she's up there with them. Kanaguri handling an opponent of this level without much damage tells you enough about how much of a threat he is. Sakamoto begins this fight in his fat form, but Kanaguri actually tries a bit and bullies the hell out of him. This just pushes Sakamoto into his skinny state almost instantly. Sakamoto and Kanaguri have a long back and forth, really the longest Sakamoto has ever had in his skinny state up until this point. And while fighting, Kanaguri would shoot a beam of light from his camera and it'd ricochet off the poles that Sakamoto had placed all around the battlefield as they were fighting, making the beams shoot all throughout the area. The two would be able to fight as beams of light are shooting all around them, a testament to both Sakamoto and Kanaguri's speed. However, Sakamoto ramps up his speed even more after this, choosing to combo Kanaguri throughout the entire auditorium. And as the fight comes to a close, Kanaguri threatens Sakamoto's daughter since he's still holding back, and this enrages him, almost taking Kanaguri's life before their battle is interrupted by Akira. Sakamoto in his skinny state proves that he's order level in this battle against Kanaguri and can still hang with the best. I would say at this point of the series, he's just lost some of that rustiness as well, or Granny Mio's acupuncture applied to the skinny state. Or you can say both. However you want to spin it, this performance against Kanaguri, who most people agree is one of the strongest characters in Sakamoto Days, proves that Sakamoto himself stands with the best from this point of the series and onward. Moving on from this, Sakamoto's next big fight is actually in a flashback. Sakamoto would fight the founder of the Order, Kindaka, alongside Nagumo, Rion, and Uzuki when they were teenagers. Without a doubt, Kindaka's also one of the strongest characters in the series, being able to constantly perception blitz these 4 low order leveled characters. Uzuki would point out that they just need to predict where he's going in order to tag him, and they eventually get the W over him, with all of them being offered a spot in the order after winning. I mentioned this fight only to show that Sakamoto was quite strong, even in his high school years. Now, we go on to a fight where Sakamoto in his skinny state had no chance of winning. And it's with this exact fight, we finally see the limits of Sakamoto's strength. As both Uzuki and Nagumo are instantly defeated by Takamura, he springs into action and takes over the fight from there. Nagumo and Uzuki were already very weakened when Takamura came for them, and Sakamoto was the only one at full strength, so he had to be the one to fight. When fighting Takamura, Sakamoto would be able to react to most of his attacks and actually combat Takamura, doing the best out of any character up until the very end of the battle, but even his efforts were useless. Takamura was simply too powerful for anybody in the series to fight, requiring Uzuki to replicate Takamura's own personality and abilities in order to defeat him. Mind you, this was really only because Uzuki caught Takamura completely off guard with this replication, so even that was a miracle. Sakamoto was stated to be the strongest assassin of all time at the beginning of the series, but Sakamoto also states that Takamura has become much stronger than he originally was back when Sakamoto was in the order, so it's likely that Takamura has also surpassed the strength of Prime Sakamoto. However, Sakamoto was not really going all out either, since he has the no-kill rule on, so he could have done a little better if he went all out. Truth is though, just as Nagumo, the second strongest order member, suggests, nobody can defeat Takamura but Takamura himself. He's just that strong compared to the rest of the cast, and Sakamoto losing to him is in no way an anti-feat. Sakamoto then goes on to fight all of the order at once alongside Nagumo and Shin, and obviously they're outnumbered so they were going to lose, but Shin manages to control their minds and stop them from attacking, allowing the trio to escape. Something to note here is that Sakamoto seems to be retaining his skinny state permanently, as at this point of the series, things are more serious than ever, with both Kamar and every assassin in the industry hunting down both him and Nagumo. Sakamoto Taro in both his fat and skinny state are easily some of the strongest characters in the series. Sakamoto in his fat state can't necessarily handle any members of Kamar or the Order, but he can handle pretty much every other character currently. Sakamoto when going all out and accessing his skinny form could defeat every single member of the Order except Takamura and possibly Nagumo. As Uzuki outright states that Nagumo at full strength is in the top 2 of the Order and has likely only gotten stronger since Sakamoto left. Nagumo also performed better during the brief scuffle against the Order and did not perform as well against Takamura due to being both distracted by Uzuki and being exhausted due to his fight with Gaku, so it's still up in the air between those two characters. Shishiba and Osaragi would not be able to defeat Sakamoto. The new members of the Order would not match Sakamoto's strength, nor would Oki, judging from Uzuki's assessment of the Order. Kamihate would not match Sakamoto's strength, but could depending on the conditions of their matchup. Hyo cannot catch up to Sakamoto either. Sakamoto almost clears all of Kamar as well. Gozu and Tenkyu are still unknown, so we'll know when they arrive into the series what happens with them. Sakamoto absolutely destroys Kumanomi in a one-on-one matchup and will probably cut loose the moment she tried anything involving civilians. Sakamoto would destroy Haruma at his own games, as Sakamoto excels at engaging with nonsense such as that. Sakamoto terrifies Gaku, as Sakamoto would not engage with Gaku in the same way that Nagumo did, choosing to instantly rush him down the same way he did in their earlier fight. Sakamoto would just beat Kanaguri again, and of course, Uzuki destroys Sakamoto, as Uzuki is far and away the current strongest character in the series and has Takamura within him. So if you had to ask me, how strong is Sakamoto? I would say that Sakamoto overall stands in the top 5 of the series, bare minimum, being able to destroy most characters in the series without even being in his prime, but it seems as if he's slowly but surely reaching that point of strength again. However, despite his strength, it seems as if the characters around him have either surpassed his prime or are catching up, so I cannot say with confidence that he's still number 1 or even top 3. We'll just have to wait and see as future battles unfold. And with that said, if you enjoyed this assessment of Sakamoto's strength, let me know by hitting that like button and subscribing to help the channel out, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace out.